I'm Amy Dolan, and this is the Feeding People podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to Feeding People. I'm Amy Dolan, your host, and this is season 2. I'm so happy to be with you tonight at the table for a really great episode. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, as always, for subscribing on Apple Podcasts. Thank you for rating and reviewing and sharing on social media. As always, it means so much to us, and we are just absolutely thrilled that you love the show and that you are sharing it and sharing your thoughts with us and how you are feeding people. So here we are tonight at the table, and I'm so thrilled to introduce you to my guest tonight, the one, the only, Maui Jones.
Hello.
That's a very dramatic
I know, it's very
intro.
Hello. Well, thank you for having me.
Hi, Maui.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. Welcome. Thanks so much for being here tonight.
Oh, thanks for having me.
We had a really great dinner.
Mm-hmm.
I always say that. It's so ridiculous. I made it. Like, what am I going to say?
But it was really good. The rigatoni was choice. It was perfectly cooked.
Maui, come on.
No, I'm serious.
I didn't even pay you.
I'm a pasta lover.
Okay.
That was perfectly cooked pasta.
This is amazing.
Do you salt your water?
Oh, you got to salt your water.
See, I have that argument with people about, do you salt your water? Like, you have to salt your water.
What's the argument?
Some people don't salt their water.
No, that's not a thing.
You have to salt your water.
Do you know what I learned recently too? This is probably like basic because I'm just learning to cook in my later years here, but like you're supposed to wait until the water is boiling.
Yep.
You knew that, right? Because otherwise the salt drops to the bottom. Once it's boiling, then
it's boiling, then you toss it in there. Do you put any olive oil in your water?
Sometimes.
Yeah, olive oil and put my olive oil, my salt, and then my pasta.
Okay, well, this is going to be a tremendous show because we're like 30 seconds in and we're talking about pasta water. Pasta water is magic.
Pasta water is magic.
I mean, it does everything for you.
I save it in jars and I pour it in my bath. No, I don't do that. That'd be weird.
Sometimes I'm only telling you this. No one else is going to hear this.
You don't actually bathe in pasta water, dude.
Sometimes when I make such a good sauce, I say to Kelly, I could take a bath in this sauce right now. That's how good it is, right?
Yeah,
watch me jump into this sauce. It's so good. No, that's just for you, Maui. No one else heard that.
Just for me and your listeners.
All right. Well, this is going to be a great show. I'm so happy you're here. So we're newer friends, which is great. You haven't seen like all the bad parts of me yet, which is just fine. We met through our mutual friend, Catherine Lofton. Let's give a big shout out to Kat Who Acts.
Friend of the pod.
Right?
Catherine Lofton.
And one day she's going to be a guest. She's resisting me, but now we're saying your time is coming, Catherine.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So Catherine Lofton introduced us. I love to tell the story about like how we sort of met.
Ships in the night.
Catherine had been telling me about you for a while, and she's in your theater company, and you've been friends a long time, right? Mm-hmm. And she'd been just telling me, Amy, you got to meet this guy. You have things in common. And also, I think he would be a really great speaker at Sunday Supper Church. And I was like, great, let's set this up. And then my friend Lauren invited me to a local TED event in Oak Park. And when I got there, I realized you were one of the speakers. And I was like, well, this is fate. This is meant to be. I heard your TED talk that night. It was so good. I was blown away by your story and everything. And then, the event was over and it was time to go. And I left and I texted Catherine on the way out. And I was like, I just met your friend Maui. I heard him talk. And she's like, that's so great. I'm so happy you met. And I'm like, well, we didn't actually meet. I had to go. He was talking to people. And she was so angry that I did not go up and introduce myself.
You should have.
I know, I really should have, but you were busy and it was over. And now here we are. So it's fine, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I will specify for legality purposes that it was speakers from a TED event doing their talks. It was not a TED event.
Yes.
And it was and the TED event was a TEDx event. So.
Thank you. I'm so glad you did that. Yes.
No problem.
So that's how we know each other. We've been in touch. I did invite you to Sunday Supper Church. You gave a fantastic sermonette. It was so lovely having you there. So how would you describe yourself? How would you introduce yourself?
So when I do public speaking events, I usually say that my name is, my given name is Kamau Maui Jones, and I am the founder and artistic director of the Echo Theater Collective.
Okay.
So that's usually my spiel.
Okay.
But I'm also a community member and lover of all things geek and food.
Yes.
Aficionado, especially like greasy spoon joints. So,
oh, yes.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so let's get right to it then. What is the best meal you've ever had?
I've been thinking about that like all week. Like, what's the best meal I've ever had? And I hard pressed to think of like to name a number one. But if I had to give you a number one, this is going to sound funny, but so we did a show with Catherine called Blue for Mr. Charlie.
Oh, yeah.
Written by James Baldwin.
Yep.
Very, very powerful piece on racism. The closing night when we did Strike, we ordered Cane's. Have you had Cane's?
No.
They're chicken fingers.
Okay.
All Cane's makes is chicken fingers, fries, and Texas toast.
Just that's it.
That's it.
I love this.
We ordered a tray because we would always go get Cane's.
Yeah.
After rehearsal, throughout the rehearsal process, and that was such an emotional, like, roller coaster. And we finally finished that last meal with that cast. The last time we would ever all be together and sharing that meal. That's probably the best meal I ever had. It was kind of the culmination of a lot of things for me. So, have
you had it since?
Oh yeah.
And does it like bring back those feelings and those emotions from that night? It's funny because the smells, the taste, how they evoke nostalgia. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Oh, I love that about food. It just like brings you right back, especially such a great memory. It brings you back with the people and the feelings and all that.
Yeah.
Well, you didn't bring this up, but I'm going to because you mentioned chicken fingers, which made me think of hot dogs. Portillo's hot dog is the best hot dog in Chicago. And how do you like your hot dog?
So this is a Chicago podcast, so I apologize to your to your listeners. I hope you don't lose any listeners over this. I am a ketchup only hot dog eater.
It's
since
possible
I was a little
I've
kid.
Never met a ketchup only.
That's
my gosh.
That's all I do, just ketchup only.
So I love ketchup also on my hot dog, but also I love pickles, relish, onions, tomato, like everything.
Nope.
Mustard. But sometimes I just can feel the shame. Like even if I'm alone and I'm like ordering, I'm like, I can't even like get the words ketchup out of my mouth exactly.
Yep.
So you just have no shame? Like
I don't have shame about anything. That's something that I've learned in my adult life, not to be ashamed of the things I love, which is hard in Chicago when you're talking about hot dogs.
Right.
That's a tough thing because for some reason people think it's okay. Like the most like woke, like self-actualized people you'll meet, will just drag you through the mud about your hot dog.
Like,
it's
what
hilarious.
Is it? Why?
I have no idea. It's the weirdest thing.
It is the weirdest thing.
And, but I don't have any shame about it, but a lot of people get in their feelings about it. And that's okay. I remember the first time I went to Gene and Jude's.
Yeah.
I was not aware of because
they don't have ketchup, right?
They don't.
Right.
I didn't know that. I asked.
Oh no, what happened?
And I was a teenager. I was like in my early teens. They yelled at me.
They yelled at you?
They yelled at me. And yeah, they were like, "What are you doing? We don't have ketchup, you idiot!" Like, everyone's laughing. I was just like, "What is happening?" I felt like I was in like a John Hughes movie, like just getting, the over the top bullying of John Hughes movies, like that '80s kind of bullying. Like that's what it felt like. I was like, "What is this? Like, why is this okay?"
So what did you do? Did you eat a plain hot dog?
Across the street at the McDonald's,
oh, no,
they sell ketchup for 10 cents a pack.
No, you didn't, Maui.
Yeah, I did.
You got your plain hot dog and you went across the street and paid 10 cents. Did you get fries or anything at McDonald's? No. You just got the 10-cent hot dog.
Gave them a dime. They gave me some ketchup. And I put it on my hot dog.
My gosh.
Boom.
Next level.
Yeah, next level.
Okay. Well, I feel like I want to go to Portillo's with you.
Yeah.
Or Gene and Jude.
Well, if we're going to Portillo's, I'm getting the beef.
Okay. So
see, I'm getting Italian beef. I'm getting a big beef. It's like a beef and a half.
Yes.
Dipped.
Yes.
No peppers.
Oh my gosh.
Large fry and a strawberry shake.
Oh, sorry, Kelly. We're still talking about Portillo's. Okay. But like Kelly has a thing. He made me aware of this, which I really appreciate. Portillo's really undersalts their fries. Mm-hmm. You always have to like ask for salt packets. And I don't really get, like, I cannot have enough salt on anything. And I don't get why they do that. Is it so everyone can control their salt or what?
I don't know. I think it probably depends on who's on the fries on any given day.
I see.
And when they put the salt on the fries. You cannot wait to put the salt on the fries.
No.
The second you take them out the fryer, that salt needs to go on. Otherwise, it's not going to stick.
You got it.
So I'm very particular about my horrible foods. So.
Oh my gosh, this is so good. Okay, well, we could talk about Portillo's and fries all day long, I feel like. But I really want to know what food was like for you growing up specifically. Like, did someone teach you to cook? Did you have family meals? How did you get to this like love of food today and salting your pasta water appropriately? Like, what was food like for you as a kid?
So we grew up pretty low income, and so food was never really a priority. Food was, you eat food so you can live.
Yes.
Eat this sludge, boy. Thank you, sir. May I have some more? So I never really thought about like food as an art form or food. Food just this elevated thing until I was older. And watching my family like cook food for like holidays, like that's a beautiful thing to watch, right? Like watching that kind of communal, like everyone's in the kitchen, everyone's getting ready, and everyone's cooking, right? Not just the women, but the men are cooking too, right? Like my grandfather had this giant barrel barbecue grill in his backyard, and he would smoke ribs in there, and and chicken and all sorts of things, right? And so and I don't know if you've ever been to a Black Thanksgiving or Christmas,
no,
but you make way too many dishes, right? So my girlfriend, who's white, right? I've been to many of her holiday dinners, and like they make like 5 tasteful dishes. This is the menu for the evening. It's lovely and it's great. It's really good. But you go to a Black household, right? Like you've got 30 dishes.
Wow.
You've got 4 meat options. You've
4?
You've got ribs. You've got chicken. You've got turkey. You've got a ham. You make way too much food. But the beautiful thing about it is that then extended family come over throughout the day and they take a plate. You give them a bit of your table. That it's a beautiful thing.
You're always expecting more family.
Yeah, so that's not the everyday eating, but the holidays. That very much sticks out in my head. I didn't really start loving food until I had to start preparing food. So my mom, she became a drug addict when I was a teenager. And I'm the oldest of my siblings. And I had to start preparing their meals. And so that then it became, okay, well, how do I make this fun? Or how do I give them just a nice time for a little bit, right? And I would go to silly lengths to do so, right? I remember we were at my grandmother's house. My grandmother, bless her soul, cannot cook to save her life. And she took the kids to the park, and I was cooking. And Mrs. Doubtfire had come out shortly before that. So while they were gone,
No.
Yeah.
No.
I dressed up like Mrs. Doubtfire. I was black Mrs. Doubtfire. And got the whole outfit on.
Oh my gosh!
Took my grandmother's glasses, the whole nine, and then I prepared an entire meal, this big beautiful meal, and I just meticulously arranged it on the table so it was like nice and pretty. Arranged the silverware how I assumed silverware was supposed to be arranged, right? And then they came home, and then I did in my best Mrs. Doubtfire voice, like dinner is served, and so it became like this whole production. I'm very dramatic, so probably why I have a theater company.
This is so cool. Like, so you were a teenager. What would you guess? Like 15, 16?
Oh, yeah, probably like 15, 16, something like that.
And you just knew, so you not only had like the responsibility to feed your siblings, but you wanted to like make it fun and show them love through it, right? And I love that so much. What did that like mean to you as you were doing that?
Oh, they came in, they cracked up. They thought it was hilarious. It was, we had a good time, and it just, being able to give them, especially when my mother was in those darker places, finding the moments where I could bring them a little bit of light was very important.
Oh my gosh.
Right. Like making them laugh however I could, just making them kind of forget for a moment.
Yeah.
That their mom isn't there. That's a tough thing.
Yeah. That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful. Such a gift that you gave your siblings. And how did that carry through into being an adult and feeding your family and friends as you got older?
So as I got older, eventually my mother just outright just left for a couple of years, and eventually my siblings grew up. Eventually I ran out of people to take care of, in terms of siblings. And, I was, for the first time, just completely out on my own. And my evolution for food became for the holidays, I didn't spend the holidays with my family for many years. Holidays became, your found family.
Yeah.
Right. So I'd hang out with my friends.
Yep.
And we would do our own Thanksgiving. One of my most memorable holidays, I think it was a Christmas. I didn't really have anybody to spend Christmas with that year. And my friend Raj came over, and we had a giant box of cereal and some fried chicken.
Wow.
And we just and we smoked weed, and we watched movies, and just had a good time.
And that was the most memorable.
And it was
why you were together.
It was one of the more memorable ones, just because it wasn't like a fancy meal. It wasn't, it was just a couple of people, but he was there, and it was just it was somebody saying, "Hey, I'm going to take," because he has family that he could have spent the holidays with.
Yeah.
And someone taking us a little bit of time, saying, "Hey, I'm here for you." However you need me to be. Yeah. I'm sure that cereal and fried chicken was not his idea of a great holiday meal, but he did it because he knew that I needed somebody in that moment. At least I think so. Maybe he just wanted the weed. I don't know.
Who knows?
But that was, for me, it was, the impact was profound, which is why I say intent and impact are two different things. And, you could have the best intentions, but the impact is what's important. If your intentions are right, usually that impact will be correct. But sometimes it's not, and you have to acknowledge that the impact is actually more important than what your intentions were, because the impact is what affects the person next to you. Yes,
absolutely. And I just love so much what you just said about that story, mainly because the food was so simple and delicious, not fancy, right? And it's it's never, I just think it's never about always the food, but there's something in food that connects us to each other. And you're in this story specifically, reminds you tells you in the moment, you're not alone and you're loved and cherished and all these things. And it's the cereal and the fried chicken, right? And to me, that is the magic of food. It's just the love and the intention and the presence and the people behind it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very primal, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it's a church community, right? You go to church and you do communion together, you break bread together.
yeah.
You share in the body of Christ, you share in the blood of Christ with each other. Food is a very, I think, very connective, communal tissue.
Yes.
That is needed and necessary. Like, at the end of the day, when you get home, you have to make time to sit down with each other. That time at the dinner table is also like, okay, well, let's exchange information. What happened on your day? This is what happened on my day.
Yes.
I need to know what happened to you because I care about you and I love you.
Yes.
If I don't have that, if I can't exchange information with you, how do I know where we stand?
Yes.
How do I know how we're growing? And how can we grow together if we can't get that time to exchange that information?
Yes.
We give so much of ourselves just because of the way that we've structured our society, right? We have to give the majority of our time to people who could care less about us, because we have to work to be given a perceived value. I'd rather spend my time with my friends and family. So it's not very conducive to that lifestyle, but at least at the end of the day, I can sit down.
Yes.
I get home with my partner, Kate, and say, hey, honey, how was your day? Over a meal.
Yes. Right.
And, and sometimes that has to be enough.
That absolutely. That's right.
Yeah.
So I know that community means so much to you. And you've said before that specifically healing and reconciling through community is what matters most. So say more about that and any connection that community and healing that you find has happened over meals or food or in your own community. Like, how do those things connect for you?
Yes. So with my theater company, like, that's kind of like our primary focus is to use those stories to bring community together in an intentional way to kind of heal those bonds that have been broken through racial inequity, gender inequality, all the isms that we perpetuate by holding up white supremacist ideals.
Yes.
When I meet with people to network, to work on connections for the theater company, for what we're going to do going forward, because I work a day job, a 9-to-5 day job in the Loop.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, that's when people want to meet, sometime between 9 and 5 during their working times. Unfortunately, I'm not able to do that. So usually 3 to 4 nights a week, most weeks, I have to meet with people for dinner.
Wow.
So I conduct all my business over meals.
Wow.
Yeah. And which is awesome because I never start with the business.
Yeah.
In that way.
Yeah.
I start with the person. Tell me about yourself. Like, I want to know you before we get into, what you want from me, what I want from you. Let's share a human moment.
Yeah.
Let's do that end of the day. Tell me about your day. I see you as more than just an asset or a means to an end. I see you as a person. I see you. I appreciate you. You're taking time out of your very busy day to meet with me when you could be home with your family. And so I'm going to treat you like family. So that's kind of informed how I do business with people, how I communicate with people, always over food, strangely.
This is awesome.
Yeah. And
what have you noticed? Sorry to interrupt. What have you noticed so you have to do business like that because you have the 9 to 5, right? But it's obviously like a strength and is, I would assume, like working out great for your organization because you're connecting over meals. So like, what has that meant to, what have you noticed? Like, are there differences in connecting with people over the meal versus like, I'll take a meeting with you at 1 p.m. in my conference room?
I think that there's an appreciation. I am constantly in awe of how my community has embraced me and let me be part of its leadership, because that's not something that should be given lightly. I often don't feel like I am qualified to speak on these issues, right? Like, who am I? What makes me so special to speak to these things? Like, how do I know that I have it all figured out? I don't know that I have it all figured out. I don't pretend to have all the answers. But I do know that there are people out there that are hurting, and I will do whatever I can to draw visibility to that so that we can do something about it. And that's kind of, and I think that is appreciated in my community. So yeah, I think that being able to connect with people on that communal food level has afforded me a bit of emotional and community and political capital to an extent.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's like got my mind going about like, what if others embrace that? Like, what if we started, I know like sometimes, you have business meals over lunch and things like that. But for Sunday Supper Church, because we gather around a meal is always like central to what we do. So, we have one team, the gathering team, who plans all the gatherings. They meet once a month here at my table. I make them dinner, and then we have our meeting. And we'll all say a lot of times after that, like, it felt like a mini Sunday Supper Church experience. And that means so much to me, that we're not just having like the gatherings where we're all together centered around meals, but like these other teams, even like working teams, are still centered around the value of the table and the meals and vulnerability and connection at the table. And so I just wonder, like, if others approached meetings or opportunities in that same way, right? You're going in, I don't know if you're having meals in people's homes or you're going out to eat or what it is, but how maybe like businesses could be different, or how relationships could be different from that starting point, as opposed to like, well, our meeting is at 5, so we should just eat. No, the meal is central to what we hope to gain from each other. Let's do that.
Yeah, I think that we undervalue the importance of just like being with each other. And I think when you approach it from that food perspective, as opposed to like, this is a meeting, we have to talk about these very important things. When you just approach it from a food or communal, it doesn't even necessarily have to be food, but just something that's like, there's without agenda, let's just be together and do life together. As opposed to like, I need something from you. That's a consumptive way of thinking. I think it's much more sustainable when we feed, to use
Thank you.
Stay on brand, when we feed each other pieces of ourselves.
Oh my gosh. Right? Ooh. Yes.
So yeah, I think that's really important.
Yes. How do you feed pieces of yourself to others?
So yeah, I feed with stories, right? That's our, we tell stories. That's so important. We tell stories at the table. We tell stories on the stage. We feed with stories. We nourish the soul by giving people a chance to be seen in a way that they haven't. To speak to their cultural truth, or whatever, deeper truth they're trying to get across, be it along lines of race, gender, sexuality, what have you, without fear of judgment. And not only that, to then be able to say to those that are watching, they're being fed that, right? That's a great main course, right? Well, here's some dessert for you, or here are the organizations in your community that are fighting for those people, that are comprised of those people, that are doing the thing so that you can be a better ally, right? So like that's really important to us, is and that is how I believe we feed our community. I think, have you ever seen the TED Talk, the danger of the single story?
Oh yeah.
Had a profound impact on me, on how I view myself, how I how I dismantle my own inherent biases, how I react to the inherent biases in those around me, just to stop and listen to that person's story, to that person's whole story. That and the sci-fi book, Robert Heinlein book from the 50s called Stranger in a Strange Land. Have you ever heard of that? Mm-mm. It's about a human male who was raised on Mars and learned a completely different way of thinking and of being. And then eventually as an adult, he came back to Earth. And so before he spoke to things, he would need to grok it. And grok it was this like deeper understanding of things. And so I try and grok things before I talk about them, right? I try and turn over every piece of that stone and know it intimately before I speak to it. You know, tell me everything about you, you know, before I even try and talk. Yeah. You know, because I don't know what it's like to be you. You know, I can't, you know, even if you tell me everything and I learn it intimately, I can't even begin to know. But until I do know as much as possible, I'm not even going to attempt to try and pass judgment or anything on you. I just want to hear your story. Because once I hear all of your story, once I learn all of you on your terms, then I think I'll be able to understand why you did the things you did. Yeah. Right? Like, if I saw a news clip of a kid, a young black kid that shot somebody, I might think, oh, that kid's a thug. But if I learn all of their story and I see the systemic oppression they had to deal with growing up, that they're living in a place that's a food desert. Yes. Living in a place that gives them no emotional stability. And all these things stacked up against them, you know, maybe I start to understand, you know, what that does to somebody. Absolutely. And maybe instead of trying to punish them, I embrace them. Yes. So. Oh my gosh, Maui, you're such a kind and generous and special soul. Thank you for sharing that. What would you, okay, can we talk about church actually for a second? Is that okay with you? Mm-hmm. I love church. Okay, great. So we have sort of similar stories in not being able to like totally connect or find the churches that we want. I'm not a fan of white churches per se, which is funny, right? White girl. We obviously created Sunday Separate Church, and I know you attend a church plant in your pastor's home. Will you just say some more about that and what that's meant to you, and specifically like what it is that was difficult for you in finding church? I find that the more that I name like the problems that I see with white churches and specifically evangelical megachurches, often like for people in my community, the more freeing it is to name those things too that are going on. So maybe just for you, like what has the experience of church been and finding what you found? So before I go into my current church, I will rewind back to when I was a little kid. I was in California, so this would have been third grade. Staying with my grandmother. She would take me to church every week. And the pastor did a sermon on accepting Christ in your heart as your Lord and Savior. And after it was over, I said to my grandmother, I thought I was like, for some reason I was really locked in to the sermon that week. And after it was over, I said to my grandmother, Gran, I call her Gran, I don't think I'm a Christian. And she was, what? You know, it's not something your grandmother wants to hear. Yeah, in church. In church. And so she said, why? And I said, well, the pastor said I need to accept Christ in my heart as my Lord and Savior. And she's like, yeah? And he's like, I didn't do that. And she said, yes, you did, remember? I said, no, you told me to do that. I didn't do that. So I'm not a Christian until I do that. And I renounced my religion. I don't know how old you are when you're in third grade. I think it was third grade. Maybe like 8. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And I didn't come back to Christ until middle school. Wow. And I started going to a youth group, and that's eventually what brought me back to Christ. And I made one of the very first friends I made there is my pastor today. We did lots of stupid things when we were young, and we take a tape recorder and make gross noises, and we would recreate like the Adam Sandler pee scene.
Oh my gosh!
Like where he's just like peeing for like minutes long.
Your pastor's gonna love this.
Just so silly. Oh, we're very proud of it. And we drifted apart eventually, especially as things got worse and worse in my life. I pushed him away. But he reached back out to me in my adult years, right as I was kind of turning things around in my life, and invited me to his church plant in Berwyn. And they met out of his living room, about 10 to 12 people plus their kids, and it feels so much like home. It doesn't feel, and I drifted away from the institutional church as I got older, and as I started to become more and more dissatisfied with the institutional church and their upholding of white supremacist ideals.
Right.
As I learned more about that, I could not stomach it.
Yes.
I said, this is not
so integrated.
It's so integrated. It's not kingdom. It's like the opposite of kingdom.
It's the opposite of Jesus.
Yeah.
Actually.
It's just like everything that he was against. And it breaks my heart.
I can literally feel it in my heart as you're saying it, because I feel like most days I'm like, how did we get here? Mm-hmm. Like, it's so far. Mm-hmm. It's unbelievable. And I don't know how we've gotten so far.
It's used as a way to scare people and control people, right? And this goes into just how we process truth,
I want to do
right?
this,
we're going to get into it.
Let's go.
So this goes into how we process truth. There's a podcast that I highly recommend called "Why Is This Happening?" Chris Hayes from MSNBC.
Yeah,
and his background is in philosophy and epistemology, and he had an old schoolmate of his that majored in philosophy, and they talk about how what we process as truth, and what a lot of what we consider truth, we don't actually know why it's true. We just accept that it is truth because it comes from our trusted institutions.
Sure.
And the church is one of the original trusted institutions, right? I don't know. This world is big and scary, and I have to work 40 hours a week, and I have kids to take care of, and I don't have time to look into everything, but my pastor said this is wrong, and so this is wrong. Yes. Because I trust him, because he's the shepherd of our flock. And when that is being used for an agenda that is not pure, when that is being used to perpetuate myths and to keep antiquated power structures in power, that's dangerous, because the people that believe in that, you are weaponizing belief. You were turning them into weapons of hate.
Yes. And
they don't realize it. They think what they're doing is full of love. They think standing outside of an abortion clinic and screaming at vulnerable women is okay. They think that's in service of God. That's crazy. It's a crazy to think. Do you think that that's what Christ would have done? Do you think the guy that washed prostitutes' feet would do something like that? Gosh, why do we think we are able to do that? If you think that Christ is allowed to do that, that's one thing. But who do you think you're Christ? Do you think that you are pure enough to be able to pass judgment on anybody? And who are we to claim that we know what he believes? There's a lot of things in the Bible that we break every day. The things that the Bible says this and it says that, and we pick and choose what we want to believe, and instead of just kind of following that number one tenet of just love.
Yes.
Right? That's a very simple thing to do.
Yes.
Love. Don't love and don't be a dick. Those are the two things that we have to do.
Basic. Yes.
Everything else is just noise.
Yes.
So
Okay. So much to say. I feel like for me, I call him the actual Jesus because he is really different. The Jesus that I read for myself in the Bible when it's just me alone is so different than the Jesus I grew up hearing about in my white megachurch evangelical based community. It's so different. And I mean, I've been in church my whole life, and I feel like it was only 3 or 4 years ago when I started reading Jesus for myself with my eyes that I saw maybe for the first time the actual Jesus. And I cannot believe, I'm like angry talking about it right now. I can't believe how different he is than what I heard growing up and what I learned even in my 20s. I'm ashamed of the lessons that I wrote for kids in that system. And I feel like the actual Jesus that I didn't know, that I am coming to know now for myself, is always friend of the prostitute, always friend of the margin. It's his starting point. And the people that he's most upset with, that he's yelling with, are often the religious leaders, which I never heard that in church. I never heard about how upset Jesus was with the religious scholars and the leaders. And I feel challenged for that in myself, right? And I only now want to be about creating churches and gatherings, and I want to show people with my life the actual Jesus, so that if that is something you're compelled by or you're interested in, you might say, wow, that's Jesus? Wow. And to me, that's the solution to what's gone wrong. Like, the solution to me is creating something new that is of the actual Jesus, and not this character that we hear about that in most churches. And often that to me is creating churches that are smaller, that are led by all, that value diversity and a variety of voices and all sorts of things. But anyway, we're just
absolutely. And you know, and I want to say, I want to make sure that we're clear to your listeners when we are speaking out against whiteness. First of all, to the white people out there, whiteness is a construct. Like you might be Irish or Italian or a mixture of which, but the concept, the creation of whiteness as a thing, is clearly, based on my interpretation of history, a constructed thing to amass power,
a system of oppression,
right? Because back in the day, in the early days of this country, you know, there were the people that were considered like in that sphere was much smaller, right? Like your Protestant, English background, like, you know, initial usurpers of this country. Everybody else was trash. Right? Like black people might have been like the lowest of the trash, but Irish people, Italian people, Polish people were all looked down on. And eventually they were like, well, to keep power, like we need this construct of whiteness. You guys can be in the club. You generally speaking look like us, be in the club, and then just hate on these black and brown people that can't pass. You know.
Yes.
You know, Asian people, they can't pass, they can't be in, right? Like that's what it is, right? Like, so don't think that this is an attack on your cultural identity, because it's not your cultural identity. It's something constructed to appropriate your cultural identity.
Yes.
You know,
and this is the system that we live in. Like, I'm just so tired of like, well, it doesn't affect me. I'm like, it affects everyone.
It affects everybody.
This is the country we live in. So what to you is the solution to the institutional church that you walked away from? Like so you found a great place. What would you say, like on a larger scale, what's the solution?
I wish I knew, because I mean, if you look back through the history of Christianity, you look back through the history of Catholicism, I mean, it's always like the religious leadership's always been wrapped up in power.
Yeah.
Right. It's always been, a system of control.
Yeah.
I don't know how you wrest the institutional church from the institution.
Yes. Right.
I wish I knew. I wish I had an answer. I think, like you said, going smaller, leaving the institutional church, leave it behind. You don't need the institutional church to validate
yes.
Who you are.
Yes.
You don't need the institutional church as a gateway to Jesus.
That's right.
There are spiritual leaders out there that are not connected to that institution that I think will give you much more profound spiritual guidance. People I follow that I would fall to the ends of the earth that I see that are just making great strides. I believe you had Darren Calhoun on your show, right?
Yeah.
I met him like one time, and I follow him on Facebook.
He's amazing,
and I'm just in awe.
Yes.
Of him.
Yes.
People like that, right? That's God at work.
Yes.
So find the most marginalized and follow them.
Oh.
Don't follow the most powerful. Follow the ones that have no power. So.
Amen. Yeah. Okay. I thank you for having this conversation with me.
Of course, my
talk
pleasure.
About this all day long.
It's my pleasure.
You. We connected it to food somehow. I don't know. We started with hot dogs, everyone. Okay, here we are.
It all began with the hot dog is raining at Portillo's.
I feel like this is the show that potentially people will be the most angry about. I mean, forget what we said about the church or white supremacy.
You can't get past the hot dogs. Yeah, that's right.
All right. So, Maui, I could talk to you all day about this, but let's wrap this up with a lightning round. Okay. This is a really quick, harsh transition, everyone. Tell me your favorite food of all time.
Pasta. Any kind of pasta.
Any kind of pasta.
Any kind of pasta. Any kind of pasta. Any kind of pasta. Honorable mention. It's not even technically a food. I mean, you consume it, but Italianized. Johnny's Italianized.
Oh, of course.
Johnny's Italian, but specifically Johnny's Italianized in Elmwood Park. The best Italianized in the world. I've fought with people about this.
What about Luigi's?
People have talked about Luigi's. No. It's
no contest too.
Johnny's is my heart.
Okay.
Yeah. Got it. Mm-hmm.
That's just those two things. So I feel like you had a third.
I'm a big Italian beef nerd. So Portillo's Italian beef, which we mentioned earlier. But number one is pasta.
Pasta. Okay.
I eat pasta all the time.
I love it.
I love it.
Cook it, make it, everything.
Mm-hmm.
What is your favorite cocktail?
Old fashioned.
Oh, that's Kelly's too.
Old fashioned. Okay. I didn't used to have a favorite cocktail. I would just hop around from drink to drink. And then I watched Mad Men.
Oh, yeah.
I just grew obsessed with Mad Men.
You got to get the big ice in your cup and shake it and everything.
Yeah. It's and I don't know why I grew so obsessed with Mad Men because Don Draper is objectively a horrible human being,
Yep.
But I love him.
That's so weird. That's so true.
Yeah. I love him. I think I can fix him.
And you are sort of rooting for him. You do see those moments of vulnerability in his childhood where you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, you see, okay, I see why you're broken.
Yeah.
We can put you back together. Oh no, you're falling apart
impossible.
Again. Yeah. So, but old fashioned.
Okay, great. All right, I love this question so much. But when people visit Chicago, because you must visit Chicago if you live here, great. Where must people eat according to Maui Jones? What's the best Chicago restaurant?
Well, we already mentioned Portillo's, which I love.
Given.
So that's a given. Oh man! So in Oak Park, there's an amazing sushi place called Sen.
Yes,
that is absolutely phenomenal. One of the
best.
With
Catherine, I've been there with Catherine.
It is a hidden gem. Not a lot of people know about it, but it is one of the best sushi places in Chicago, in the Chicagoland area. What's the Ethiopian restaurant my dad and I just went to? I wanted to mention that place. And I can't, and I'm completely blanking on the name.
We'll put it in the show notes.
I'll find it. But there's this amazing Ethiopian restaurant on the north side. I mean, there's a few different amazing Ethiopian restaurants on the north side.
What do you order?
It's awesome because have you ever had Ethiopian food?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so it comes. So you order a bunch of different things, and it comes on this giant platter, and it is served on this spongy bread.
Ooh.
And the bread is what you rip it through the bread, and then you pick up the food with the bread.
I love this.
And you eat it with your hands.
I love
you
this.
pick different dishes, like the meat dishes are different types of WOT, W-O-T. Is be like a chicken or a beef or a lamb, fish, and then various like veggies, veggie options as well. Oh, it's so so good.
Yum. Yeah. Okay, Maui, this has been so awesome. We're gonna end in just a minute with a parting piece of guidance. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so thankful Catherine introduced us. I look forward to collaborating on all the things in the future. Where can people find you and follow along with all the good that you're doing in Chicago?
So mostly through Echo Theater Collective at echotheatercollective.org or our Facebook page, Echo Theater Collective. If you want to follow me specifically, even though my social media game is not great, you can follow me on Twitter at Maui Thoughts. Those are the ways to follow us. You can look out for, we have a upcoming production. I don't think I've announced this anywhere publicly yet.
With the exclusive.
Feeding People exclusive. Our next project is going to be August Wilson's Fences.
Oh, wow.
And we're hoping to use that as a way to talk about the systemic degradation of the Black family dynamic, especially as it pertains to Black fathers.
Wow.
And provide connections to support systems for Black families and specifically Black fathers.
Wow.
So that's like what we do with our productions,
that's
right?
What you do. Yes.
Here's a production. Here's the connection for if you're inspired, if you know someone who needs help, here are ways to help.
It's too good. I'm too impressed by this.
Thank you.
Fences, when is that coming up?
That should be coming out in the fall.
Okay, great.
I don't have specific dates yet, but
I'll be there.
I'm shooting for the fall.
That sounds great. Mm-hmm. Get yourself to Echo Collective and see the show. Support Maui's work. It's only good that you're doing. All right, so let's end the show. What is your final words of wisdom?
Final words of wisdom, I would say, whenever you can, in all things, love. And as I stated earlier, follow the ones that don't have the power.
Okay. Maui, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great to have you.